Hello, my name is Maurice Washington. I want to welcome everybody to another episode of Executive Talk. Those are watching live via our studio, those are watch it later via Roku, or that listen later on our podcast. Thank you guys for joining us. Today's show is titled Protecting Your Employee While Protecting Yourself. As you know, company culture and trying to do things of that nature to make the culture come together is a top priority. It's also such a top priority in trying to do it in a hybrid workspace. We've come into a day and age where things have changed quite dramatically. No longer are we in the office space together where we can, work on the company culture. Now we have to work even harder. So how do we do that? How do we protect our employees while protecting ourselves? What does that look like in today's environment? With me today, we have a special discussion. We have a panel discussion, and Rick Calloway is always a guest with us. He's gonna talk to us about his perspective and how he sees it. But first of all, let's Rick, go ahead and tell us who you are, what you do, and how long have you been doing it?
Well, my name is Rick Calloway. I'm a professional insurance broker specializing in commercial insurance. My children tell me I'm older than dirt, so I've been doing this about 35 years.
All right, all right. And so with that amount of years of experience, everybody that's watching, that's why we have him on here. Obviously, he's our subject matter expert within Executive Talk, but nonetheless, he has a different perspective and he sees some of the claims, some of the details, some of the issues that come about because of this company culture and the things that we're not dealing with. So that's why Rick wanted to definitely address this. So we also have Rebecca Byers with us. How you doing, Rebecca?
Hi, good morning to both of you. How are you?
We're doing well. Happy to have you here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I'm really happy to be here, and this is a terrific topic, really important right now. So I'm pleased to be part of this conversation.
Awesome, thank you. So give us a little bit about your background and also who is BPM?
Yeah, so I've been practicing HR for over 25 years, primarily in the Bay Area here in California. I'm an HR consultant manager with BPM, and BPM stands for Because People Matter. We're an organization that provides advisory services for HR, finance, tax, IT. We handle entity setups and mergers and acquisitions.
Major. Okay. So thank the two of you for being here. We're going to jump right into this because, again, people really want to hear this topic. This is part of the successful traction that business owners need to really address within their company, especially the larger the company, even if it's a small, 5-person company. These are major issues. And here's why it's major: because people matter, because people are involved within your company culture. Things change very quickly from the time that you, as a business owner, when you're doing it by yourself, to the point where you have employees, and it changes the dynamics as to how your business is going to function. So we're going to go ahead and start getting into this topic. Rick and I, we did some research and we ran into a white paper that was very good. So again, this is not Executive Talk that came up with this article. This is something that we found and wanted to share with you. And we're going to go ahead and start with this portion right here. And it talks about invest in talent for long-term vision, not short-term fix, not a short-term fix. Now, along with recruiting top talent, upskilling your current workforce and developing top performers will become paramount in 2023. The benefits are endless with no downsides. Upskilling can increase employee satisfaction, allowing employees to take on new roles within your organization rather than looking elsewhere. Boost productivity when employees are confident their company is behind them. Encourage collaboration and improve morale. Reduce hiring and onboarding costs. Future-proof your organization for next downturn or disaster because your workforce is better prepared. Skill development is increasingly important to employees too. With millennials composing one of the largest pools of labor, hiring managers need to know that 93% of them prioritize skill development. Let me go ahead and take this one and give my thoughts. When it comes to that, I feel like this is a major requirement. I completely agree with this portion of the white paper here. Here's where I feel like the struggle is. It used to be that long-term fix and presenting those skills and uh, what we see is that business owners were at a time where they trusted their employees were going to be there for a long period of time. There was that dynamic where long term was a priority to the workforce. You just knew that if you're going to work for that company, you're going to work for them for 30 years, maybe even 20 years, and kind of move on. So investing that type of engagement was important, and that skill set was important because at least you knew there was a return on the time frame that you spent helping this person understand those skills. Because the dynamics have changed, where we are choosing, we're being a lot more free to make our choice as far as, and that's what millennials are bringing to the table. Is they're bringing a lot of choice to the table. We want this, we want to do it this way, and so it's changed the dynamics where we're not seeing a lot of employees stay with companies for long stretches of time. Well, within that, I feel like there's the crossroads of a business owner understanding that their workforce does need to be skilled so that way they can provide a good product and customer service to their end user, to their clients. However, if they're not trusting that their environment is going to stay around, I don't think the prioritization of giving all this skill and all this extra attention is being there. I feel like there's a collision course here, and sometimes there's a sacrifice that's being made just based on that principle of the longevity. I do agree that, again, you have to give this information, you have to prep them and help them feel empowered to do their job. But at the same time, I feel like the business owner wants to be empowered to know that you're going to stay there for a long period of time to help bridge that gap. So I'm going to go ahead and hand over the mic to Rebecca and see what she thinks about this.
Yeah, it's a really important point here. I mean, we know that the workforce that we have supporting our business is the biggest investment that we can make, right? So when we look at investing in our talent, there are really three components that we should be paying attention to. The first one is we should be paying attention to the talent that we currently have, right? And this is what you're talking about, Maurice. I mean, we've got to consider the importance of upskilling. And we really should be looking at making the most of the existing talent that we have post-pandemic. Things are settling down. Now is the time for organizations to conduct a baseline assessment of their current resources. Skills should be evaluated based on whether the current workforce is adequately equipped to help your organization execute its strategic priorities. The second thing that we should be looking at is the talent that we need. And this is where organizations should clearly establish the link between their strategic priorities and their talent needs. In other words, employers need to know what to do in the short and the long term and who they need to do that. And then once that link is solidified, then they can consider investing in their existing workforce's skills and engaging in that upskilling initiative, as well as perhaps attracting and retaining the correct new talent. The third piece here to factor in is the expectations that your talent has of you as an organization. Our workforce after this pandemic has clear expectations and demands for their current and also their prospective employers. Initiatives like DEI, having a purpose at their organization, and the employee's experience overall. These are strategic priorities now for our workforce, and employees expect this stuff, right? So if employers neglect these expectations, it will have negative consequences, including losing the talent that you have there that you could be investing in. So, as you indicated earlier, Maurice, a strong employee engagement, it's tied to several positive impacts in the workforce, right? We have higher productivity, stronger morale, lower turnover, among others. Something also to note that shouldn't be, we really have to be aware of is that when our employees are happy and they're secure, those are usually not the employees who file legal claims against employers. So when we have changes in the workforce and there's instability, it creates insecurity and anxiety. And so we need to make sure that we stabilize things. When our employees are anxious and fearful, they can be mistrustful of their workplace. So I think this is a good, Rick, you probably have a lot of experience fielding claims on the insurance side that are born out of this kind of thing with the instability and lack of employee engagement. What do you think there?
That experience. But I do have a question. What is DEI?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Very good. I miss those acronyms on occasion. There are so many of them flying around. You mentioned the dissatisfied employees filing claims. Claims can be filed for the smallest of things that an employee sees or thinks they hear. When you're hiring, they think, well, I'm qualified to do that job. Before you start hiring, you need to nail down the job descriptions so that you're not bypassing someone in your own organization or providing skills to someone other than the employee that's also entitled to it. So it takes care no matter what you're doing when you're dealing with employees, especially now. It's just, unfortunately, I see more claims coming in now than ever before. Back to you.
You really have me. You two really have me fired up at this point because you guys are hitting on some key points. Let's go ahead and talk about this because this hits right along with everything that the two of you are suggesting here. Where this particular topic that they're bringing in this article is saying employee engagement is just not an HR thing. Now, perhaps the pandemic played a role in clearly conveying the integral tie between employee engagement and business results. Those companies that were able to maintain engagement in a remote or hybrid work model have thrived. Those that weren't have lost ground in terms of both employee retention and customer impacts. Gallup reports that employees who are engaged are 14% more productive, and that companies with engaged employees are 23% more profitable than those with disengaged employees. Knowing this, is puzzling to see organizations still deeming employee engagement as an HR thing. Probably companies know that employee engagement starts with a positive company culture. Culture, of course, starts with the top in the C-suite. So what can an organization do to rally together interdepartmentally to embrace employee engagement? Man, that is loaded. It's loaded. And, Rebecca, you had said a key phrase there. Your employee has a view. And when you think of that, your employee has a view, that shows you how, and the employee has always had a point of view. And then let me go ahead and start off with this and run back into that statement. When we think as a business owner, what we tend to do is the bigger we get, the less relationship we tend to create. You have to remember that first relationship that you started in the very beginning needs to continue regardless. But as business owners, what we tend to do is try to flex time and say, well, if they're unhappy, they can go speak to HR. No, your employee has a point of view. They have a relationship. We got to remember that they're a part of this company now. They're part of their inner workings of your company. And what does that mean? Why is that so important? Well, they see a whole nother side of transitions that are happening within time and space of your business. While you're thinking forward thoughts and vision and let's go and, relocate or do some things of that nature, they're thinking about the day to day and they see a pattern that's happening in your business. And if they have that pattern, that they see that and they don't feel engaged, they don't feel part of something, they're going to move jobs just based on the fact that they don't feel part of it. So your employee has a view. And if you just pass it off to a department, you're losing that relationship. And especially now that we're in this hybrid workspace, we're seeing more and more dissatisfaction start to arise. So that's my opinion on this particular topic. What about you, Rebecca?
Yeah, this is a really important point. And as you're rightly pointing out, I mean, high employee engagement, it results in all kinds of positive outcomes for organizations, right? And in addition to the higher rates of productivity and profitability, research is showing us that engaged employees also correlate with other vital outcomes like higher employee satisfaction, which has a direct correlation to increased commitment and lower turnover. We know that turnover is expensive. We also, when we have higher engagement, we have lower employee stress, which also has a decrease in burnout. And that's all tied to fewer mistakes, reduced absenteeism, safer workplaces. We see higher quality customer service, improved collaboration, better employee health, higher stock prices, and more effective leadership. Something though that we cannot forget, and thank you for sharing, Maurice, about the employee view. That is it's so vital here, because I think a lot of leadership and organizations are, they're looking forward, right? They're focusing on that vision that you talked about, and they're thinking of strategies. But meanwhile, the business is running, and this community of people, if you will, are running the business, right, and executing that. And employee engagement is largely the role of our supervisors, the people that we're reporting directly into, whether or not they're part of our senior leadership team, right? The people who are approving the time off requests, providing the daily little bits of feedback. We often don't equip those supervisors to effectively engage their direct reports. And I think, I see that often where we have a gap there. So if we can provide our leadership with the information and tools that they need to effectively engage their direct reports and train them on the importance of this initiative, it will drive all kinds of key outcomes with employee engagement. There's a saying in HR that employees leave their supervisors, not their employers. And this has certainly been my experience. And I know when I've had to manage litigation and legal issues in the workplace, not always, but it's not uncommon where you see that supervisor right there in the middle of that conflict and that problem. Rick, I imagine you probably can point to several case studies where legal claims have arose due to supervisors' involvement or lack of involvement, leading to the claim.
The supervisors are critical to running of any company, and they're also unfortunately responsible for many of the claims. If I own a company, I'm pretty well trained to deal with my staff. Unfortunately, supervisors were a great millwright or a great electrician, and they get promoted to supervisor. No one has ever trained them on those relationship skills. One of the most important trainings we do all the time is safety training for supervisors, relationship building for supervisors. Just a misunderstanding of something causes a claim, and the claim comes in and the owner goes, I didn't know anything about that. Nobody ever told me. So what the employee hears and what the supervisor hears and what the owner hears may be three different things. Communications is critical. You have to be concise. You have to be consistent. Employees for some reason seem to be a little bit more sensitive now, probably because they have more freedom. They're expected to do more, and they do more. Like you said, your employees are your most valuable asset.
I agree. That is the change. This is almost I don't know. It's like a collision course, for lack of better terms, of where we are, time and space. And we're not picking up on it as business owners that there is a lot more freedom. There is a lot more expected interaction between employers and employees nowadays that we haven't. Certain generations didn't have that type of interaction. It was one of those do as I say and just move forward. Now it's transitioned to, let's talk about it as a whole, and that conversation is just a missing piece. Which into this article right here, where it's suggesting that refraining quiet quitting to turn disengaged employees into engaged superstars. It's always what we're looking for. So now, in the wake of the pandemic and economic downturn, employee burnout is climbing. HR Dive reports 89% of U.S. employees are experiencing burnout. Globally, it's not much better. A new study at Asana looked at over 10,000 employees across 7 countries and found approximately 70% of people experienced burnout in the last year. So, when Forbes reports it's a worldwide problem, listen up. The World Health Organization defines burnout as a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. It is characterized by three key symptoms: feeling of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, or feeling negativism or cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. Now, that's a lot to take in, folks. You know, quiet quitting and burnout or go hand in hand. It doesn't take much for people to become burned out. It does not take much, folks. And we become short-sighted as a business owner, thinking that our employees are just fine. And what we end up doing is putting some kind of relationship towards, well, they're getting paid, they have a roof over their head, they should be fine. It's their job to motivate themselves. There's some truth to that, but a relationship has more details that are aligned with that. There is a commitment there of understand what I'm going through. Understand I'm going to go through a lot of changes. Understand the economy is pressing on me as far as the affordability of lifetime nowadays. There's a lot of different factors forcing and pressing on people that we haven't had before. COVID created a stress that people weren't used to. It caused a lot of mental health issues, a lot of depression. So quiet quitting can come not just because it's sometimes not even a factor of they don't like the job. It could become a lot of other factors. And sometimes when people lose sight of the vision as to where the company is headed and just doing the same work day after day, they lose sight of the end result as to what this work is doing. It's very hard to be part of a system and run a system, because when you run a system, you don't realize that system is running over and over again. And that does get boring. That does create a quiet quitting. If you're like, this is pointless. Did I go to school to do this? That's what I feel like you run into when you have an office space. Well, if you don't re-engage your employees in the bottom line, well, you have forgotten. If you have the opportunity to remind them of what that system is really affecting and what that did quarterly for the company overall and what that's going to do for you and where it's going to head, I feel like that can stop that quiet quitting. So that's my thought in regards to that. What about you, Rebecca?
Yeah, there are in fact multiple factors that contribute to quiet quitting. In addition to burnout, we also can see, that ineffective management leads to that, and that was part of the point that we just covered about the vital role of our supervisors, and also a lack of a well-defined future and purpose in our jobs. That directly results in a lack of meaning for workers in the workplace. We know that if we sit in a position long enough, it's going to evolve. It's just part of, these are dynamic relationships, they're dynamic experiences in the workplace. And that natural evolution often results in job creep. Where we accumulate these additional tasks and responsibilities over the course of time. And the chaos during COVID really escalated job creep. Our employers relied on employees to be nimble, right? We all had to take on more and kind of, scramble to keep things going. And at the same time, our supervisors and managers turned their focus to keeping these businesses running rather than looking at the employee engagement piece. So, you add that into the rising costs due to inflation, and then there's stagnant pay, which is all contributing to the result of employee apathy. So, some ways that we can re-engage our employees, we can reevaluate the benefits that we offer and make sure that they invite employees to come to our organizations and stay there, and we provide them with a supportive work environment. Part of that could be offering flexible work schedules, considering if and when remote work can be provided, either full or part-time. If on-site work is absolutely necessary, look at that space. Maybe you need to reimagine the space and provide a deliberate area where they can get respite from their work when they need it. Enable your supervisors to reconnect with their direct reports. Expect them to have one-on-ones with their direct reports and recognize their achievements, and also create opportunities for work-related community building, which I know can be a bit of a challenge. I think we're going to talk a little bit about that later on. there's been a lot of organic movement in the workplace over the last few years. Roles have shifted, companies have downsized, they've reimagined their processes. Employee primary duties and work locations have shifted, right? We've seen a lot of employees move all over the country and sometimes outside of the country. Now that the dust is settling, employers need to take stock of where things are. We've got to stop operating like we're in a 911 mode, and we've got to start laying the foundation for the new realities of the workplace. Review job descriptions, make sure they're accurate. Assess the pay rates for the jobs as they are currently being executed, right? Be sure that you're compliant with your pay equity laws, which we have here in California and in various other states. Look over your independent contractor roster and make sure that they're not engaging in employee work. These are just a few areas of your workforce that you could start looking at closely. And I imagine, Rick, that you can speak to your experience of how employers have ended up in the hot seat when employee changes occur without the proper assessment and planning.
That is very true. That is very true. There is a correlation between this new environment of remote work and being in the office work. The remote work has caused an issue as people have not had their jobs redefined or how they're supposed to be conducted. They just all of a sudden said, okay, you're working at home now, get your job done. One, it takes, you got to get computers set up, you got all the technology to deal with. That causes problems. The communications in the communities are gone, basically. You used to be in the office and walk over and see a associate, go, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? That's gone. The employee versus independent contractor is critical here in California. They redefined the law, and basically it says if that independent contractor is required for your job, he's an employee. You can't be a contractor that has carpenters and say, oh, I'm hiring a bunch of independent contractors to be carpenters. No, you just hired an employee. So that's become an issue in certain cases. So that has to be watched by employers because it's not business as usual. Business rules, regulations are changing. Since I need to put in a plug for myself, when all this is going on, be sure you have an experienced insurance broker and you have the proper insurance to take care of. No matter how hard you try, unfortunately, something always seems to go wrong.
That's it. Key statement, Rebecca. Key statement, Rick. Let's go and go to the next one because it merges right into this. What we have here and what they're discussing in this article is commitment to innovation has decreased as companies work through the COVID-19 crisis and focus on short-term issues. Now, at the onset, during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw companies implement niche tech solutions that solved immediate problems, which made sense since everyone was putting out fires. But many of those efforts neglected long-term planning. In 2022, McKinsey reported technology advances would give businesses, governments, and social sector institutions more possibilities to lift their productivity, invent and reinvent offerings, and contribute to humanity's well-being. Check. In 2023, HR Tech will expand those opportunities by using tools like the employee engagement platform Connects to connect the hybrid workforce and collect more focused data that will drive decision-making. Tech that is scalable and can be delivered anywhere, anytime, will soon be table stakes. Closing the digital divide and enhancing existing connections will be the mantra for 2023 and beyond. Now, I completely agree with this article. And why do I agree? Let's see, this is the plug for Teams, this is the plug for Zoom and those other technology advances, Google Meets or whatnot. It kept businesses going during that time, during the pandemic. It was a huge deal. It now has become a part of a new norm. Before, when we had meetings such as that, it was like, hey, you just need to go meet the person face to face. You couldn't do nationwide business. You can reimagine your whole infrastructure. Well, with that infrastructure change, business owners, because a lot of us are, as far as a generational perspective, Some of us are just getting used to cell phones, computers, and we're fine with that. And that's the length of our technology and our skill set and what we want to do because it's a comfort for us. Well, as we get into the millennials and they become part of our workforce, they have a different perspective. They have the ability to reimagine. And part of the new term that we're running into when it comes to the office space is that thing called convenience. Convenience is running smack dead into day-to-day society. If you aren't agile, if you're not convenient, if you're not thinking, well, I need an app for this so I can just do this and just get it over here and it'll be quicker. That's your office speaking uh, technology, but they're also speaking convenience right in front of you. If you're not innovating, if you're not making those changes within today's office space, when we talk about quiet quitting, that's part of the dynamic that draws towards quiet quitting. Your workforce is saying, well, you guys aren't dynamic enough. You guys aren't making any changes to adapt to where we go, where things are going. You guys are really behind the times. Well, they'll go ahead and quiet quit on you and look for a company that may be in the same industry, but is a lot more forward thinking. So this innovation, although tricky and you got to be careful still, as Rick and I have chosen, we've discussed that you have to definitely stay in tune with innovation, but make sure that you're staying on top of that convenience role that we're on and make sure that you're catering to where things are going to stay agile and again, convenient to both your clients and also your employees. Rebecca, what do you think about that?
Yes, as remote work continues to be normalized, we are seeing fallout largely in the area of employee isolation, which leads to disengagement and siloed work behaviors. And as you're pointing out, Maurice, technology can help us here. Employers can respond and should respond by prioritizing communication within the workplace and leverage innovation to facilitate that. So you could reconsider your performance management process, try to get away from the dreaded annual review and establish ongoing and transparent discussions. So for example, at BPM, we offer a product called BPM Link. I've never seen anything like this. Honestly, we use it for us as well as we provide it to clients, but it's an online system that facilitates very quick conversations. And it also tracks performance. It helps provide, support to employees. It's fast. Employees like to use it. As you pointed out, Maurice, messaging apps, like Teams and Slack, those can enable an organization to establish a social space for their workers in the absence of the kitchen that we're used to going to or the water cooler that we would have on site. You can create individual channels to help reinforce that the space is there for your workers, for them so that they can bond and share about topics that matter to them in life, like, kids and elder care and pets and travel and that sort of thing. You could also consider an online employee recognition program. There are all kinds out there, but, a couple that come to mind are Awardco or Blueboard. And these systems provide a space to acknowledge employees as well as give employees an opportunity to acknowledge one another, and that helps build community. It doesn't have to cost a lot to show that you care and to create that engagement. You can provide an office lunch every now and then, even for your remote workers, and you can do that by offering them $10, $15 that they can expense for a lunch. You could host an online social gathering, even if it's just an hour and it's virtual. Really, sometimes it's the small things that send the strongest messages to the employees that they matter. So, now is the time that employers can look and reconsider their approach to performance management and how they can leverage technology to create these either in-person or virtual communities. There is exposure around this issue. I have seen clients actually drop systems and cut back on those expenses relating to technology during COVID. In some cases, I've even seen employers stop performance management processes altogether during COVID. When ongoing communication regarding our workplace communities, our performance, when these things don't occur regularly and we lose that transparency, those voids are filled by the employee's interpretation of what's going on. For example, a promotion that an employee thought they deserved but was awarded to a colleague, a reassignment to another department during a downsizing effort, a smaller bonus maybe than they had otherwise expected. Rick, I'm curious, what are your thoughts regarding claims that have been born out of a lack of clear and ongoing feedback and or a lack of that community engagement?
Claims come from anywhere. It's that you mentioned the award co and that thing. I've had claims arise from that. There are some employees by their own personality and their customer base will get, in our industry anyway, will get a compliment that, hey, so-and-so did a great job for him. We have a meeting monthly and we work with other clients to do it, that we award a wow. Said, hey, you did a great job. Here's a $25 gift certificate. If you're not consistent and paying attention, you've got a lot of employees that are out there that just kind of do their job and work quietly and get it done. All of a sudden, they think they're not appreciated. And then you have a problem. So when you're giving awards, be sure to take care and keep track of, be consistent, look at a way to give employees that are doing their job well, but the clients don't say anything. Communications. It seems to be the key to all of our claims and problems now, because what you hear, what I hear, what the employee hears are different things. So we need to communicate. We need to listen. The day of the iron-fisted boss that says, you've got a job, be happy, get on with work. Doesn't work now. Employees want to be recognized. They know that they're doing a good job. And they also want to be able to use the technology that makes their job easier.
That's
Why
it.
do I always have to be the downer about all this stuff?
Come on, man. Because you handled the claims, Rick. That's how.
Yep.
That's your life.
That is true.
Yeah, it is true. Let's get into this last piece, because this one is huge. It really ties into everything the two of you said. So let me go ahead and bring up this piece in the article. It tells us here that employee feedback to shape our HR. Using employee feedback to shape HR strategy. Now, ignore your employees and they'll go away. Just ask Elon Musk, who heavy-handed leadership as he took the helm at Twitter resulted in mass exodus of employees, and not just the ones he asked to leave. If you haven't asked your employees what's important to them lately, now is the time. We see a critical need for organizations to develop ongoing processes for gathering and acting on employee feedback. It's no longer simply nice to do. If it ever was, it's now a need to do. Employee feedback can help effectively shape HR strategy to drive engagement and retention. So even those organizations committed to taking action based on this annual feedback were subject to high potential that the actions taken really had no relevance in the current environment. In fact, 34% of employees say that their managers don't listen when they voice their opinions, and point to this as a key factor in making the decision to leave their jobs. So let me go ahead and provide a little insight on this. When I every time I see this article, it hits me dead in the face when the first word is communication. One thing that I would like to present to everybody: communication is very much so an art. It is not as easy as you think. Let's go ahead and take the example Rick and also Rebecca provided. Hey, I'm giving an award to Joe over there and also Sue over there. Well, the communication is you spoke it. You gave some communication to them. You gave it to your audience or to your culture, and they saw that you're thinking that, hey, they see this as a company that's giving back, that wants to give recognition, and your perspective is that of, I'm just trying to do the right thing. I want to acknowledge the work ethic. Well, if you lost sight of your culture, you don't know your actions are speaking louder than words. Now your culture sees this engagement in this moment as a well, you always give a award to those two. I guess those are your favorites. So I guess everybody else is just sitting here not doing anything. You know what? I'm folding my arms and I'm not going to give my opinion. So you've already started to stir the pot. Also, one thing I learned when it comes to communication is sometimes when you're looking for those feedback. So, for example, if you go to a restaurant, they'll say, "How was your experience? Were you satisfied with your waiter or waitress? Did you get your food on time?" Those are open-ended questions. Yes, you're communicating. Yes, you're getting feedback. Yes, you're including your clients into your culture, into your business. But guess what? Those are open-ended questions. If you just happen to have a bad day, well, you could have gave it sooner. I asked this question, and this is what I ended up with. So now, what tends to happen is a knee-jerk reaction. You're like, well, what adjustment do I make? Well, it's the same thing with the office space. If you pass a survey down from your supervisor to the employee, and that relationship is not good, and or if a question does not lead towards a place where that person feels interaction is there, well, guess what? They gave you their feedback. Nothing was implemented on that. You asked them again for something else. Nothing was given. Well, then guess what? The wrong questions gave the right feedback, but with no action. So therefore, perception starts to take place in a person's life and as an employee. And again, I'm even further removed because I work from home now. I don't work in the office space, so I can't really see what your intentions are. I can't see the movements that you're making. So I start to quietly quit. So your actions within the office space have got to speak so much volumes at this stage. They always have, but even more so, the bigger and the more changes we go through as a culture, the more technology we insert into the office space, your actions of this communication have got to be good. And also, your communication style has to be on point. As Rick pointed out, it has to be on point because misinterpretation happens so frequently. So without going an hour long in my thoughts, Rebecca, what do you think about that?
Yeah, this is such an important topic here. Employee input is vital. Gone are the days where we go to work for somebody and we don't have a voice, right? And this is a huge part. This is a huge theme that you keep revisiting, Maurice. And I think it's really worthwhile to pay attention to this. So we know that employee input is vital, and collection of this information needs to be deliberate. Exit interviews, I think, a lot of listeners here might be providing exit interviews, and that in fact can provide valuable information regarding, trends and themes and demographics. But at that point, you've lost the employee. They're gone. They're heading out. So having deliberate conversations, one-on-ones with your direct reports, conducting stay interviews company-wide, engaging in ongoing performance discussions will show employees that they are valued and that they are key contributors to the success of your organization. But remember though, and this was a good point that you raised, Maurice, that simply asking isn't enough. You need to demonstrate that you're listening and that you're taking action when it's reasonable. It doesn't mean that everything that your employees feed back into you needs to be acted upon, right? But you need to demonstrate to them that you're listening. Conduct town hall meetings if you're not doing that. 2 to 3 times a year, get everybody together for 15 to 30 minutes, acknowledge the input that you're receiving on an ongoing basis. Just knowing that their voice is being heard goes a long way to building that trust and that engagement. And employee feedback is not only important from an engagement standpoint, it's also key to understanding what is going on inside of your organization. Brewing issues like underlying conflict, harassment, discrimination, retaliation, those might be percolating and you may not know about them. Rick, you probably have seen a number of claims come through where in hindsight, which is, 2020, you look at that and go, gosh, if they had only been keeping their ear to the ground deliberately and tracking that stuff more proactively. I'm sure you could speak to some of that.
Absolutely. That's why supervisors are so important. They're closer to the ground than the guy in the C-suite. They need to meet with their supervisors. They need to meet with their employers. One thing about sending out a survey, take great care in designing it. Don't just ask a bunch of random questions, because you may or may not get the information you expect to get. But be prepared, like you said, you have to respond with some sort of implementation or an explanation why we can't do this. You can't just say, gee, thanks for the survey. And then you've probably aggravated the employees more than anything else. And when you send, talking about communications, when you send communication to employees, associates, I've seen it happen multiple times where people have all of a sudden forgotten those simple words like please and thank you. Can you take care of this for me? The supervisor sends to the employee, and the employee is pretty good. This guy doesn't appreciate what I do. But you put those little words in there because you actually mean them. When I want somebody to do something, I'm very thankful they do it for me, because if they don't do it, then I've got to do it myself. And that could lead to a bigger mess. What we see also coming recently in the way of consultants or health and wellness consultants. They're coming in and trying to help build a positive culture, because negativity can tear a company apart and lead to nothing but claims. Employee gets unhappy, and it goes and escalates and escalates and escalates. Pretty soon you've got a totally negative culture. So do your best to communicate, communicate, communicate. Sort of like real estate: location, location, location.
Ooh, heavy topic, but that's why I have heavy hitters to discuss topics like these, because again, you guys see, everybody sees how much goes into having a culture. It's not just about having a business. There's a lot of detail that seems to come about. So I'm going to go ahead and give everybody an opportunity to give a final thought, and we'll start with Rebecca here and see what do you have to say finally.
Yeah, thanks, Maurice, again for the opportunity to participate in this talk. So, employee engagement is more than just annual bonuses and holiday parties. We know this now, right? As the workforce continues to shift to remote environments with employee teams spreading out across various regions, we need to find a way to keep those employees close to us. And we can start with those in the leadership positions and train them on the importance of employee engagement, how, as Rick keeps pointing out, that how to appropriately communicate in the workplace. We can leverage innovation to help support and facilitate these initiatives. We should also reconsider how and when we are assessing performance and how we're providing that critical feedback. And we can update organizational practices to ensure that employee engagement is central to any key policies and procedures that we implement. At BPM, we have HR professionals who can be your thought partner on how to strategize these important initiatives and help execute them for you.
Thank you so much again, Rebecca, for that. And Rick, let's go ahead and hand over the stage to you.
Well, I wish all of my clients would hire Rebecca. It would make my life much easier, their life much easier. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen all the time. So I've got to go back to, no matter how hard you try, be careful. Make sure you work with a professional broker to be sure you're properly covered for those once in a lifetime devastating claims. You own a business, you work with your employees, you don't have time to think about, gee, I need to insure this, or how do I insure that? That's why you work with a professional. You have to have a backup plan when something goes wrong, and unfortunately, that's insurance. And fortunately for me, that's insurance. So I'm going to try and get everyone to hire a Rebecca. Make life much easier.
All right, Rebecca, be prepared. Rick is going to send them your way. I'm going to go ahead and close it out for everybody here. When we think about this topic, we obviously, when you go on the internet and you think about this is always a top priority within the office space is a company culture. How do you do it? We're taking the big focus on culture, and we need to go back to relationship. We need to go back to employees. These are people not taking it anymore as far as being mistreated. That is the flare up within today's society, is the mistreatment. The negative feelings start to flourish, and then we have claims. It's just that in that order. In relationships, one thing that we do, and I understand business owners, we want to you know, make this year the best year ever, increase revenue, so on and so forth. But if you don't increase that revenue within your culture, you still lost. That is the key component here when it comes to company culture. Even though you gain more revenues, you still lost people, and you never grew. That's the emphasis in today's topic, is that we need to grow people. We need to encourage their skill set, ensure that they are going the direction of the company by ensuring that their needs are met, ensuring that their creativity, as long as it's in line with the company and the direction that it's going, is connected to that same conversation that you had in the very beginning when you hired. That's what they're expecting. That excitement, do your best to keep that excitement going. That's an important part. If your organization is too big to where you can't have that reach anymore, consider that. But let's stop the bleeding, if you will. Let's bring the relationships back into your office space, and let's see these cultures thrive. It's important. It's important to economies, and it's important to people's livelihoods. People have kids and children and so on and so forth that they need to take care of and keep pressing on themselves. So I want to thank both Rick and Rebecca for your insight on today's topic. Obviously, they're a wealth of information, so please reach out to them. You have Rebecca with BPM, and you also have Rick with Pacific Diversified Insurance. This is why they're there. Insurance is important. Protect yourself. Also, most importantly, protect your employees. So that way the whole culture thrives, not just you. I want to thank everybody for watching, listening to today's topic. We'll see you guys next week with some more great information and more things that we can do to help inspire your company and keep the businesses going. But in the meantime, the three of us, we actually have to get back to work. You guys have a great day.